Good morning. Happy Sabbath. Corey and Betsy were two grown-up ladies who were moving into some new barracks at a prison camp in Europe in the Second World War, during the Second World War. They had been imprisoned as prisoners of war for quite a while then, and they were moving into some new barracks in Ravensbrück. And they were a little scared. They weren't sure what to look for. But that morning, before they moved, they studied their Bible. They had a secret Bible that they had brought with them to Ravensbrück. And they were able to look at it and to read every single day the stories and the messages from Jesus. And that morning, they had read from 1 Thessalonians chapter 5. And then they were moving into their barracks, and they went, and there was a really narrow aisle. And on both sides of the aisle were these slats of these beds that were basically just wood, and they were wide. They were made for 4 people to sleep on, and there was some straw on it, and they were stacked 3 high. And they walked through the narrow aisle until their prison guide said, "Up there, that's where you're supposed to sleep." So they climbed up, and they climbed over one slat, and they climbed over to the next one, and that's where they were supposed to sleep. And they couldn't sit up straight because they would bump their head on the one above them. And so they kind of climbed down into the straw, and all of a sudden Corey went, "Ouch! Something bit me." And she looked, and she said, "There's a flea." And then they started feeling there's all kinds of fleas, and they went across the bed, went across the next bed, went down, climbed down, and stood in the aisle and started looking, and they're like, "Oh, there's fleas here." And one of them said, Betsy said, "How are we going to live with the fleas?" And she said, "But you know what? God will help us." Do you remember what we read this morning in 1 Thessalonians 5? So Corey looked this way, and she looked that way, and there was no prison guard close by. So she reached and she got her little Bible that she had been hiding, and she looked in 1 Thessalonians 5, and she started reading. And Betsy was like, "It's the next verse, it's the next verse." And she said, "Be thankful in all things. This is the will of Jesus." And so Betsy said, this is what we need to do. We need to be thankful in everything. Corey said, "What do we have to be thankful for right now?" Betsy said, "We can be thankful that we're together." Oh, yes, you're so right. And we can be thankful that we're so crowded in here. They had found out that there were going to be 9 people sleeping on their little slat that was made for 4 people. She said, we can be thankful for that because we can tell lots of people about Jesus. Corey said, "Okay. Thank you, Jesus, that we're so jam-crammed, packed in this place." And Betsy said, "And thank you for the fleas." And Betsy looked at her, and she said, "Thank you for the fleas." And Corey said, "It says, be thankful in all circumstances." I don't think I can be thankful for the fleas. Even God himself can't make me thankful for a little flea. Betsy said, "That's what it says, and that's what we need to do." And so they began their life there in that new barracks. And things were kind of hard. Betsy was getting kind of sick, and so she had to stay in the barracks all day long, and she would work on the knitting crew. And she would knit socks all day long for soldiers. And Corey would be taken out into the camp to work and do heavy labor. And at the end of every day, Corey would come back, and Betsy would be waiting for her, and they would go to supper together. Well, one day, Corey came back, and there was Betsy waiting for her. And Betsy's eyes were sparkling. And Corey said, "Why are you so excited tonight?" And Betsy said, "You know how we've always wondered how we're able to tell people so much about Jesus here in these barracks, and how the guards never come in, and so we can just stand in the aisle and we can read, and there's people all around us, and we can read from our Bibles and no one ever catches us? You know how we've always wondered how we can tell people, so many people, about Jesus?" She said, "Well, I found out today why." She said, said, I was knitting socks and someone else was, and then pretty soon we were starting to talk about, well, they're supposed to be this size, and no, they're supposed to be this size, and trying to figure it out. And so one of us went to the door and said, guard, could you come in and help us, because we're not sure that we're doing this right? And you know what the guard said? I'm not going into your barracks. Do you know how many fleas are in that barracks? And Betsy said, you know what? We were thankful for the fleas, and there was a good reason. Jesus used those fleas to be a blessing, and so that we could tell all kinds of people about him. Did you have lots of things you were thankful for this Thanksgiving? Did you think of some nice things? Were you thankful for some sad things or some kind of hard things? Were you? Good. That's what Jesus says to do, because he can take all things and he can make them beautiful and he can make them good, just like he used the fleas to be a blessing. You can go back to your seats.